Review time. Resident Evil 9. It's good. Thank you. Good video. See you later. All joking aside, Resident Evil 9 Requiem is actually quite phenomenal. I really, really liked it. Now, am I biased? Yes, I'm a longtime Resident Evil fan. Played through all of the remakes pretty much, except for I don't think I finished 3. But that's it. I won't get into that discourse. Played OG Resident Evil 1 and 2. And have enjoyed a little bit of Code Veronica and obviously OG Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6. Grew up playing a lot of those games, really love them. They're a big part of my childhood and also something that I find just overall really fun to go back to. Reminds me of my old days playing games with like my dad, for example, who I would play RE5 and 6 co-op with when I was like 13. Now, as much as I have a soft spot for RE5 and 6, not many people do, which is fair. Or well, I guess more like 5 than would like 6, but that's not to say that even though I have a soft spot, I can't admit that those games have their problems. They have not aged very well. They have many mechanical issues, especially 6, and can feel very clunky at times. But I understand what Capcom always wanted to do with those games. They wanted to satisfy both audiences at the same time. And that's quite a challenge to do with Resident Evil. There's the crowd that likes 4, and there's the crowd that likes the classics. And those crowds don't always mix. For original and remake is a very tongue-in-cheek, at times very scary, but still mostly overall action horror adventure game with fun quips, crazy boss fights, and grotesque enemies that Leon has to one-liner his way through. Whereas the originals are a very grounded, single-space kind of exploration survival horror game. They're different. They just simply are. And while they take place in the same franchise and have the same crazy moments throughout time, they are distinctly different experiences. And that makes it quite a challenge for the games like 5 and 6, which wish to satisfy both audiences, but will obviously struggle with that. However, I think Resident Evil 9, in doing a dual campaign, similar to the idea they tried to do in 6 with multiple campaigns, where your one campaign is a traditional survival horror, and your other is action horror, and flipping back and forth to keep the pacing feeling fresh, was absolutely the best move. Now, I'll dive into details of why I feel that way particularly, especially with the way this... Now, I'll dive into reasons I feel that way particularly, especially with, certain moments of the story feeling more impactful because of how they go back and forth. But overall, I think the best way I could say it is that Resident Evil 9 really lets you have your cake and eat it too. It truly wants to give fans of all the games the perfect experience they could love, while also giving them maybe the flip side of the coin they're not always a big fan of, and still allowing them to enjoy that side that's not really the core of what they love about Resident Evil. And that's why I think 9 excels and what makes it such a phenomenal experience. Now, the first thing I'll say and get out the way immediately, the game looks gorgeous. And if I ever catch any of you putting that DLSS 5 slop over top of Resident Evil 9, we have beef, we have problems. I'm in your house, I'm in your walls. You're fucked. I'm catching you. You're donezo. The graphics look incredibly real. The blood splatters are insane. I mean, holy shit, man. Like, the way you shoot a zombie in this game, and it's like, it's almost a little much. You're like, whoa, what are we doing? But it's just so awesome. I mean, I can't even imagine, the level of processing and programming and effort and artistic brilliance it takes to have a game look so beautiful and sleek and also be grotesque and intense at the same time. As a fan of the survival horror genre, I'm not sure there's a game that does it better. RE9 is impeccable in that sense. The scary moments are scary, the surreal moments are surreal, and the action-heavy moments feel gritty and intense. They do it perfectly, and it's beautiful the entire way through. There's no section that I felt was, maybe not as interesting to look at or things like that. I know some people feel that way about Leon's half in the latter half of the game. I won't get into spoilers of specific plot points, but as shown in the trailers, so I will talk about stuff that was shown in the trailers. A lot of people have complained about Leon's section in Raccoon City. I did not have much of a problem with that, mostly probably because I was playing through it the whole time, just sitting there like, oh my god, I'm in Raccoon City again, holy shit, man, whoa. Like, yeah, so that didn't really bother me. But I think it's a fair criticism to say that maybe the color palette is not as dense and is not as wide variety of things to look at when you're there. It's mostly run down Raccoon City, but that also makes sense because of the fact that it was like heat missiled at the end of RE3. And I also think, without getting into spoilers, there is a section that comes after that plenty makes up for lack of visual aesthetic that you see throughout Raccoon City. But I do think it's worth bringing that up, that I do understand that people don't like that. But this is my review, and I didn't have a problem with it, so. Another thing that I think is pretty straightforward from the other remakes is gameplay. The gameplay feels pretty much similar. I will say I do play on keyboard and mouse, so that may have changed, some of the reactions. I saw Maximilian Dude talk about in his reviews that he struggled with the aiming and combat on controller, thought that it felt a little clunky. Can't comment on that. I haven't played through the game on controller at all, despite the fact that I've gone through multiple times, gotten all the achievements, done all the challenges, even done the secret puzzle with a guide. I did all of that on keyboard and mouse, so can't comment on the controller controls. Do want to point that out. But what I can comment on is pretty much the combat in its fullest extent. I did do a full playthrough for Minimalist, Survivalist. I did the speedrun achievements. I did it on Insanity mode. I played through it with infinite ammo, just going crazy. And I just love the game. I think it feels really great on all difficulties. I know some people also wish that there was a harder difficulty at the start, but I do think there are sections of standard that are challenging and can still be, hard to get through even if you are a Resident Evil fan. Although I will admit, if you've played through a lot of these games, maybe it could be a cakewalk your first time through. But I do think that Insanity really makes up for that. It's fucking wild, man. The extra spawn rates and everything on Insanity, I've attempted a couple runs going through Insanity, without infinite ammo, and it is hard. Like, you definitely need a guide. It would definitely take hours upon hours, but I think that is a challenge that if you're a real fan, you'll want to rise up to. I'm not sure that's a challenge I'm in the mood for at the moment, but it's definitely something that, can kind of linger there as this, big challenge for people to go for post-game if they were hoping for something that was maybe a little more, I guess, thorn heavy, really has the game biting back at you a little harder. No zombie puns intended. I think so much of what makes me love the gameplay this time around, though, in 9 particularly, is that it's fresh feeling because of the weapons that they give you. Like, Grace starting with a Magnum is wild. I love the idea of giving you the weakest pistol possible and the literal revolver of God that Leon just happens to hand Grace, which would easily blow her arm off if she really tried to use that thing. I mean, I love the little animation of her firing the Requiem and being like, ow, my hand. Like, it's a nice little detail. And it shows a huge contrast between Leon, who is essentially a superhuman at this point, and Grace, who is very out of her depth, just trying to solve a mystery and also solve cases for the FBI at the same time. Now, I want to jump into the story, because a lot of what I really love about this game is the story. I will be avoiding spoilers for people who haven't played it, but I will be doing a spoiler section at the end of the video. So I'm going to talk about the story briefly and my thoughts and my overall opinions in a sort of generalized sense, and then at the end of the video, I'll jump back to it and talk about spoilers. I'll talk about levels in certain areas that I really liked that perhaps were not shown, and get into that in more detail. But for now, let's just jump into the story in a general sense. Overall, I think the plot's actually really good. I know Resident Evil always hasn't been known for its plot, but I actually do think some of the strongest parts of original RE4 and remake of RE4, because that's personally my favorite, has always been that it is goofy and crazy and really out there, but the story moments still hit. The soft spots, you still feel them. And even though it's a very larger-than-life tale, it's very human at the same time. And I think some of the criticisms that people have, and personally that I have, going back to 5 and 6, is that they keep the action and try to be crazy, but they lose the human core of what makes 4 so fun. Leon is insane and is larger than life, but he's still human. You still see pieces of that young cop from RE2, I almost said RE1, RE2, who slowly is trying to just grow and move past what he's been through before. I think Remake does that better than original RE4, but that's, there's trade-offs between the two, obviously. But I think that Requiem takes what RE4 Remake set up really well and just runs with it with Leon. He's sick. He's suffering, as they've shown in the trailers. He's trying to find a cure to a disease that he has, and he is trying to essentially also help Grace at the same time, because their paths have collided after Grace has gone to investigate the murder of her mother. Now, that is insane, first of all, that the FBI sent her to the site to investigate her own mother's murder. That poor girl has been through some trauma, as the game talks about very early on. And seeing how their stories intertwine, seeing how Grace and Leon, despite, Leon being this kind of, Uncle Leon just essentially being the GOAT and just, kicking doors open and doing roundhouse kicks at the crisp age of 51, while Grace is, actually crying and weeping and freaking out the whole time. They are, in a sense, very similar people. They value the same things, they want the same things, and even though on the outside they couldn't be more different, Grace and Leon are actually quite similar on the inside. And that's the kind of beauty that RE Requiem really tries to go for. This idea of two contrasts that share a similar core. Through gameplay, through experiences, through level design, you're experiencing pure horror for Grace and insane, albeit very unrealistic at times, action with Leon. And while those two should never fit together, they do, because the heart of both of those stories is the same. Leon and Grace both want answers, and they are doing their best to find them the only way they know how. Grace lurking through and solving mysteries as an FBI agent, and Leon busting down doors as he's done for the whole franchise. It's phenomenal. It's great. You feel those core moments of both of them being willing to sacrifice, being willing to fight for what it takes, and being willing to step up when they need to, despite their own flaws, whether they be physical limitations or mental limitations. Both characters go through their challenges and rise to the occasion, and it's beautiful to see that happen throughout this entire experience. It's incredible in a sense, and I know I keep glazing the game really hard here, but I did really like it, how Capcom was able to take two things that feel completely opposite, that should not fit together at all whatsoever. They should not be able to, and yet it works. It just works. It's phenomenal. And where the story goes, the plot lines that it goes through, the references it gives people to, who are OG fans who really love the franchise and have been around for a long time, like myself, you will feel loved. You feel loved, and just, even if you were a newer fan who I think had never played a Resident Evil game, maybe this is a hot take, but I think if you've never played an RE game, I think you can pick up 9, and while there may be a few things you'll have to piece together yourself, you can love the game. You can feel those great moments. And if you're a longtime fan, you get those extra little levels, but I don't think you need those to enjoy this game. It does not feel like an Avengers moment where you need to have played 8 other games to understand RE9. It is a beautiful experience for a newcomer and a love letter to a franchise for a longtime fan. Just like they were able to combine the two campaigns that were so different, they're able to combine audiences to bring in new people and send love to those who've been there along the way. That's really an accomplishment from Capcom, and it's something that's quite challenging. Taking different gameplay styles, different tones, and making it to where any audience member could understand what Resident Evil wants to be, is, and respect those who have been around for a long time. Now, I will jump into spoilers now. So if you don't want to be spoiled, I know I'm late to getting this review up, and the whole world feels like it's played this game, but I still wanted to talk about it. And so yeah, spoiler time. Gonna be talking about big plot points, really specific things about gameplay that, maybe you wouldn't know going into it. So other than the general talks of it plays like the old RE remakes, if you've seen those, third-person action, and the general story gist that I just went through, I will now be jumping specifically into details on zones, areas, characters, all that sort of stuff. So you've been warned. RE9, overall plot-wise, is essentially trying to be a requiem for the franchise, essentially. A love letter to maybe those who didn't get to make it this far. And I think that's kind of beautiful in a sense, because you really feel that. It feels like a brand new game, a love letter to those maybe who fell off the franchise because they didn't like where it once was, or those who have wanted something different from it for a while. They really try to give everyone their cake. This is especially true with Leon. This game glazes the shit out of Leon throughout the entire plot. And I know some people were really hoping that by the finale that maybe this would be Leon's kind of swan song. And it's very evident when you beat the game that it's absolutely not. It is not his swan song at all. In fact, he's probably the best he's ever been. He might be older, but he's back in prime Leon condition by the end. He gets his disease cured by Elpis and is essentially just the GOAT again. And I kind of love that. Grace is someone who always felt like she failed, and so is Leon. They are the same person, but in different ways. Leon could not make a difference in original Raccoon City. Grace could not make a difference when her mother was murdered. But they both have the chance here and now, in Raccoon City, to make a difference, no matter what it takes. Whether you are the action hero slowly dying, who Leon is, or you are Grace, a small-time FBI agent attempting to just make a difference. You can rise to the occasion. That's what the game essentially wants to say. And may it be a requiem, as they say at the end, for those who have suffered and passed. I think the idea of giving redemption to Spencer is interesting, and I actually really like it. I've seen some people say online they think it's kind of crazy, but it makes sense. It makes sense in a sense that it feels like a fourth wall break a little bit. Like I said before, I think Capcom is very, very aware of the fact that they made mistakes along the way with the franchise, that not everybody was happy, and that over a long period of time, 30 years of Resident Evil, RE9 represents more than just a game. It represents lifetimes for people. It represents a journey. It represents love and affection that fans have had for something for so incredibly long, a large portion of Capcom's existence. I think that's some of the reasons they give you that traditional RE Remake combat, whether it be third person for Leon or, the more modern kind of first person combats for like 7 and 8 with Grace. They want people to feel happy, but then you have things like them giving you the Magnum early, or giving you lots of ammunition, or spreading things out in unique and interesting ways. They want it to feel like a fantasy land for a Resident Evil fan, but also feel fresh and interesting for those who maybe weren't as into Resident Evil in the past. Giving you the Magnum early almost feels like a crazy eye-opening moment for a Resident Evil fan, because that is the gun that is saved for the end if you're a longtime fan. But also, if you're a new fan and you know nothing, you get to have this cool experience of a horror game where it's essentially giving you a get-out-of-jail-free card, that anything you shoot with this thing will die. Now, why do I make a real effort to point out little things like that? Comparisons between Leon and Grace, tonal shifts yet that feel the same. Why would I do all of that? My big thing is I really believe that RE9 is an attempt to remake, in a spiritual sense, RE6. RE6 attempted to be everything. It attempted to be an action game with horror sequences, with fun, traditional combat-breaking experiences that still harkened back to what people love about Resident Evil. And 9 really, really feels like they tried to do that again, but they took it from a different perspective. They took a different angle, they tried a different route, they tried to bring the scope down a little bit, not to do some giant Avengers-style game, but still give that action core center with a horror garnish around it that people love so much. And they just knocked it out of the park. It was fantastic. I loved certain plot points of, Leon running through Raccoon City, dealing with, giant spiders again, just like the original games, and, having crazy motorcycle chase sequences and everything throughout. It was just amazing. I really, really loved that about the game. And so I found myself overall just absolutely in love with how they were able to essentially take a good example of this, right? Because it's hard for me to talk about it in a specific way. There are moments that harken to other games. For example, Hunk showing up and you having that boss fight with him. That is something I think that not everybody would recognize, but it's something that if you did, it really adds a layer to it. But Hunk's encounter is amazing no matter what. If you had no clue who Hunk was, you just thought he was some beefed up RE John Resident Evil guy, which is you could maybe argue Hunk kind of is. He shows up and is still intimidating. And that is a really awesome thing to do. It does not rely on fan service to make that moment awesome. You feel that in the horror sequences too. When you are running from the girl in the basement and you're trying your best to survive and you have those creepy moments of lurking, you have to cut the lights on and off, she's jumping in and out of vents, you're running, you're throwing the Molotovs. That obviously harkens back to Lisa Trevor stuff from Resident Evil 1. It's clearly what it's trying to do. But I don't think you need to have recognized, oh, this reminds me of Lisa Trevor, to love that sequence. I think it is beautiful on its own while still giving you what you wanted. This is the RE6 they wanted. 9 is what they always wanted that game to be. They just weren't ready yet. And I think that it's kind of nice because that shortcoming that Capcom once had, and if somehow Capcom devs see this, I hope that they recognize that while I'm sure some of them struggled back then with the fact that that wasn't well received, it gave you this moment that you rose to the occasion and made such a phenomenal game. I think if GTA 6 wasn't coming out this year, RE9 Requiem would be an easy shoo-in potentially for Game of the Year. It's awesome. It gives everyone what they could possibly want. And I find myself constantly just saying how much I loved it because it's true. I think it's a top 5 Resident Evil game. I really do. I think from Leon's character arc in this game to surviving his infection and helping, with the help of Sherry and everything, and, Grace being able to save Emily, it feels like a true hero's story masked in this culmination of, wow, it's been 30 years, and we're approaching the 10th game, potentially. A huge milestone for the franchise. And it feels like they're saying, we're here to stay, and we've never been more proud. Capcom should stand on business. This game is good, and it is an incredible experience that everybody, even if you don't like horror, should check out. It's not only fun, it's fun in its most terrifying, gut-wrenching moments. The story takes twists, like with Emily being ill, turning into a monster only to save her at the last minute, it really keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole time. Until the credits literally started rolling, I did not know what to expect. All the way down to Victor being a nemesis, to fighting a Wesker clone. I mean, holy shit, man. And all of it feeling just incredible. And in fact, I really wish we'd have actually, if I had one singular critique, I wish we'd have had the chance to actually fight Xeno throughout the game. But other than that, I will say that I think the game is really, really good, and we'll probably just have that as DLC. So I can't sit here and entirely complain about the Xeno sequence when I still thought it was cool, and knowing that we will probably get something like that in the future. Especially if we get an RE5 remake, which will obviously just have Wesker in it. Overall, though, in usual fashion, I've kind of just been rambling for a review, kind of going back and forth, just talking about stuff I like, and I always try to do that with my reviews. I like the idea that they feel a little more genuine and raw than a lot of reviewed content can feel these days. So I think I'll just leave it there. I think overall, Resident Evil Requiem is a masterpiece. You see people giving it 10s out of 10s, believe them. I feel the same way. A 9.5 to a 10 out of 10 normally looks to me like somebody is blown away by something, or that it should be a generational title like an Elden Ring. This is. It really is. This pushes the horror genre forward. It pushes Resident Evil forward. It pushes forward what I expect from Capcom, which, not to raise the, the tensions, but they've got big shoes to fill now. They've really impressed me with this game. And I think it's one that will last for years to come. I think in years people will look back on 9 as a really big milestone for the franchise. And I feel lucky to have lived to see it. A requiem for those who have passed. To the fans who didn't make it this far, this is for you. And I think that that's beautiful. And you really feel that love, that excitement, that energy that Capcom brought to this game. It really stands strong. And I've been Capcom pilled this year. What can I say? I'm excited for Pragmata. I really loved RE9. I kind of want to jump back into Monster Hunter now that it has some, performance patches and things like that. And there's other old Capcom games I really want to go back to. Maybe play some Devil May Cry on the channel and talk about that franchise. I think it would be fun. So, thank you all so much for watching. This was longer than I had intended it to be, and it kind of turned into a rant video about me really liking RE9. But I think that it's fun to just kind of get on cam and share my feelings with stuff with you guys. So thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more reviews, let me know. I intend to review more games this year and talk about them. I also intend to do some more Deadlock lore stuff that's longer form on the channel, maybe specific character videos, really diving into the lore around them. I think that could be fun. And maybe you guys will get some more highlights and stuff from streams as things go on. But overall, keep following me on short form content on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all that stuff. It's all in the description. Go check it out there. And that's about all I got to say. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I will catch you all on the flip side. And much love to everybody. Take care. Bye.